Are you developing software at a company and it feels like people treat you like a code monkey? They don't really care about your ideas. They just want to make sure you get work done as quickly as possible, and there's a lot of pressure. Well, stay tuned because today we're going to talk about how budgeting really impacts your job satisfaction and how happy you are right after this. Hi, I'm Jamie Edwards, and at Healthy Software Developer, I want to help you have a sustainable career in software development where you don't get burned out, you don't get pushed around by people who don't really understand software development, so you can just get back to having a great career again. Many companies I've worked for in my career have been fun when the culture at the company lets me really be creative and the people on the team are under less pressure and we get to actually come up with great ideas. But in some companies, the way the business model is, how they make money and how they invest, can't really create that kind of an environment because people are scared and they don't really understand what's different about software development. So in this video, I'm going to give you some information that'll hopefully help you understand, is your company really set up to harness creativity and invest in a way that people can actually produce really cool software products? Or are they operating under a cloud of fear? So when you work on a software development project, what is it about some companies and some projects that make your job feel like they're treating you like a code monkey, somebody who's not supposed to think, you're just supposed to produce value? Well, I think a lot of companies forget that investors, whether it's a publicly traded company or a small little startup, they want business outcomes. They don't actually just want work to get completed. And if you think about any company, Amazon as an example, that had to start up, they had to figure out, if we do a bunch of work, partner with different book companies that publish things, because remember, Amazon started out as an online bookstore. How can our investment, how much money we put into software development, create profit for us? If a company goes to Silicon Valley or anywhere else and tries to get funding from somebody to try to build a product, they have to justify, hey, if you invest, let's say a couple $1,000,000 in my idea, I'm going to produce this much money for you. They don't say, hey, pay me $3 million to build this exact software product, because that company who's investing doesn't really know if that's the right software product. They don't really understand the market. They're going to trust, if I give you this money, you're going to do, as a startup founder or as a business owner, whatever it takes to make sure I get my return on investment. And where a lot of companies go wrong and they create this culture that'll make you really not like your job is they treat software development like manufacturing a car. If you were going to build a new car, like when Elon Musk had to go about designing the first couple Teslas, there's a lot of tooling that has to be built to manufacture a car on an assembly line. There's all kinds of equipment and molds and things that have to be built, that some of those can cost millions of dollars just for the tool. And so those types of companies and those types of efforts, they take a lot of upfront investment in research, because if you design, let's say, the chassis of the car wrong, then you go to actually produce your first few cars and there's a problem, you're never going to recuperate that investment. You may have to destroy the whole mold and build it over again. What a lot of leaders and managers at software companies don't really understand is that software development doesn't have the same qualities as manufacturing a car. We can release a small bit of that chassis or a little bit of that idea and test it out with our customer and find out where it's not the right car in this case, and get feedback and change the code. And it doesn't cost us millions of dollars to change the product. It costs us maybe thousands of dollars. And so when a company is trying to design and invest in software development, and they want to know up front exactly what the product's going to be, they're not benefiting from the fact that software development actually gives them more chances to release something to their customer, find out what they really want, which is usually different than what they think their customers want, and then give it to them way cheaper than manufacturing a car. So how do accountants and leaders at company get into this manufacturing mindset? And how does that actually cause them to create boring products that don't profit very much? And this is why a lot of software developers, you might be out there, you're a UX person, an operations person, somebody who's being paid to build software. That's why these pressure cooker environments get created, is because all the effort and all the thinking around the company gets to be tied to how quickly can we produce things, instead of releasing lots of little ideas and being okay with the fact that some of those are going to be wrong. And it doesn't mean we have to rewrite the whole product. We just have to refactor it. We just have to experiment with something different. Well, the first problem is many leaders, managers, product managers, and UX people, if they don't understand this, they don't really trust their customer. So they make a lot of assumptions, and they want to just design, just like I talked about the car example, they want to design the whole car based on upfront research first, and then get the software development team to just begin building it and getting it out there as quickly as possible in as complete as a fashion as possible. So they design it all up front, and they really are just too scared to invest some in putting an idea out there with the team and be okay with, I may have a big budget, but I'm just going to take a little slice of that budget and put it out there, and be ready to find out that I may actually have spent some money on software development that's a waste, and I need to now change something. So they really just are in a mindset where they want to put off feedback until they release some big product. And if you think about some high profile examples of this, for example, when Apple in the 90s and early 2000s wasn't doing as well, and they were releasing new versions of the Mac computer, for example. To manufacture a computer takes a lot of effort. You got to find suppliers, you got to do all this stuff to line everything up and then make a big media splash. And when you invest like that, if you get it wrong, you lose a ton of money. And many companies are out there building software with that same approach and mindset, and then they're frustrated. Why do we, spend, let's say, a year or 6 months to build a product? We put it in front of our customer. We find out they're not really finding it as valuable. VPs and people get fired. Well, it's because they're too scared to really listen to what their customer wants early, because they think, well, if I show them just a little bit of my idea, they're going to throw, stones at it. They're going to say it's a bad idea. And this is just totally not true. Most of the most successful startups and even big companies out there that are doing a replatform or they're experimenting with a new product, they've learned you have to put, people might say half-baked ideas, but it's not. You have to put your early versions of your vision out there to get feedback as quickly as possible and have a relationship with your customer where you're letting them change what you think is a good idea. Otherwise, you're just delaying finding out until you've spent a ton of money that the product is not the right product. The second thing that causes accountants and leaders to build really boring products is accountants at companies, whether it's the CFO or a comptroller or anything like this, they want to see early signs of success. An example of this is if you were to invest in the stock market and put, a couple $1,000s into a stock, if you didn't really understand long-term investing, which software development is mid to long-term investment, you might put your money in and then you get up in the morning and you look at the stock and you're like, why isn't it going up? And if you're somebody who doesn't have a high risk tolerance, meaning you can't put an investment in something and just wait and give it some time to return, you're really not a good person to manage a software company. And unfortunately, a lot of leaders that manage software companies, they might have made their money in a different business than software, or maybe they did well in the 90s and they don't understand how it's changed because it's so expensive now. And rather, when a company can actually put some money into some software development effort and leave it alone and just give it some time until the company's able to actually release some things and get some feedback, and release some things and get some feedback. The longer a company can continue to invest in their product, the longer it's going to give people to find the most valuable ideas. And the most valuable ideas usually aren't what the founder came up with, or the product manager, or the developers, whoever came up with an idea. It's usually undiscovered ideas that your customer tells you only when they start to use the product. And so accountants typically use this method of budgeting called percent complete budgeting. And what this is let's say you, in a manufacturing company, my car example, the company was going to spend $1 million to build a car. And not one car, the assembly line, basically all the tooling to produce cars. Well, if they're going to spend $1 million, and this is all tooling that has to be built, and this is similar to software development, the accountants are keeping track of, okay, this week, how close did we get to finishing all the tooling? Okay, this week, how close did we get to finishing all the tooling? And so they're measuring how close, based on how much money I'm spending on building the tooling, am I to finishing based on how much I said I was going to spend. And this is how a lot of companies invest in software development. They look at it like, okay, we've got a backlog. This is everything we're going to build. And so week to week, they're looking at how much am I paying my software developers and how close to being done are they. This completely doesn't work in an agile environment. In an agile software development project, you don't want to actually measure the percentage complete, because that's going to force you psychologically to be attached to the only things the company is going to measure and build are the ideas we came up with. Instead, you want to actually have budgets set up so that as you release, like if you're doing Scrum, let's say, and you're releasing a new version every 2 weeks to your customer, every 2 weeks, you let that new release get out there, you get some feedback, and then you've got money ready to go to build stuff you never even thought of. And you're not going to be able to do that if you measure success based on percentage complete. So really what this gets down to is the reason why you might hate your job or be frustrated that there's a lot of pressure to try to get things done, and it seems like the company can't really be as profitable as it could be, is that companies that play it safe lose money. If you work for a company that doesn't have the courage to experiment and put little ideas out there and get feedback and budget monthly instead of budgeting for percentage complete of something they think of up front, they're actually losing money because they're missing out on finding new features that could make them a lot more money. And if you've read Seth Godin's book from a while ago called The Purple Cow, he talks about this, how in today's market, because there's so many competitors and there's so many other software companies out there. I mean, think of just in like the CMS space, like WordPress and SharePoint and things like that. There's probably 100 companies out there all competing. The only way that those companies are going to actually make a lot of money that you work for is if they do something radical in the market. They come up with something that really is different and really catches the eyes of their consumer. And what is the chance that a company that you might work for that's already had a product that's already been in the industry and people already know about it, making some small, safe, incremental improvements to it are really going to cause a lot of profit? They're not. You have to actually take risks. You have to try something bold. And I think a lot of companies think that that bold risk taking really belongs to the CEO or the product managers, and it doesn't. It belongs to the customer. The customer is going to tell your company, I want you to do this radical thing, only when they get a chance to voice their opinion, and then you've got money left over for it. So I'll talk about this more in other videos, but being able to budget a software project monthly instead of based on percentage complete is really what's going to create an environment where you go into work every day, you sit down to write code, and you're writing just enough code to get a small change in front of the customer as quickly as you can. And the next week you might build something that nobody on the team ever thought of before. And so refactoring becomes an extremely important skill in this environment. If you're going to actually have fun working on a software project where there's less pressure to just burn down work on a backlog and instead be creative, and that's a lot of what I talk about on this channel, then you need to embrace refactoring and be okay with all this code I wrote, a week ago or 2 weeks ago. I'm going to rip it completely apart and rewrite it now because we're going to try something different with our customer. So how can companies and teams that you might work on set up the culture of the company in the way they invest to stop treating software developers like code monkeys? Well, the first thing is the people who invest in software development need to get more clear on the business outcomes they want and not just feature targets, meaning Instead of companies they spend so much time trying to figure out, how do I design the order entry screen, and how do I design the friending screen, or, how do I design the transaction system, or whatever feature of your product is. Companies spend tons of time designing a whole bunch of that, getting your team to estimate it. Instead, companies should be spending more of their time figuring out, how are we going to make money? What's the core little idea of whatever we're spending money on, and doing this all the time, not just at the beginning of the project, that we think is going to cause us to profit. And then every single time you release a new version of your software, reevaluating that based on what you're learning. The second thing companies can do that'll really create an environment where there's less pressure, there's more creativity, and there's a better chance that your software company is going to build something that really makes a lot of money, they don't play it safe, is to choose how much to spend to reach an outcome, not to build a feature, just like I was talking about. So if, for example, the company has a theory, if we make this change to the software, it can cause us to acquire new customers, and that will cause us to, let's say, make $3 more million this year. Don't spend all the money on just reaching that one outcome through a design that everybody came up with. Instead, just figure out, if I want to make an extra $3 million, how much does that mean to me as far as the accounting side of the house? Am I willing to invest $1 million to try to make $3 million? Am I willing to invest $2 million to try to make $3 million? Whatever that amount is, take that money, whether it's $1 million, $2 million, and then divide it up over however long you can pursue reaching that outcome. So if your company really wants to get feedback from their customer and they're willing to let go of their ideas and discover what customers want, they can then take that $1 million and say, okay, over the next year, every 2 weeks, we're going to experiment and try something to actually make that $3 million. And we're going to do whatever it takes. We're going to try new stuff every single week, every time we release things, and we're going to measure things. We're not going to design a $2 million change to the product up front with all kinds of assumptions we cannot possibly validate with our customer, build them, release them, and wait 6 to 12 months to spend all that money before the customer sees anything and then goes, yeah, this is cool, but it's not really what I wanted, which is what happens to a lot of companies. And the third thing your company can do to create a better work environment where people are able to be more creative and they build profitable software is to create what's called learning milestones. When a company goes to, let's say, an angel investor or somebody like that, and somebody has an idea for a new software product, they have to pitch them something that's usually never been done before, or they're taking a risk, and they have to convince the people who are making the investment that their work history, maybe they've run companies before, is good, or the ideas they've had before have been profitable. But they don't really have to convince that startup that the product they're thinking of building is the right product, because most people that invest in software products, whether it's Facebook or anybody, they know there's no way that you can basically look at data and go, yeah, this product's gonna be profitable. It's a risk, it's a bet. And so the way that these angel investors actually measure, if I give this company $3 million or $5 million, or if at your enterprise, I give this company, a $250,000 budget, let's say, to make an investment in the software, instead of measuring, hey, how close are you done to building your product with the money that I gave you, they're looking at things they can measure about the outcomes of the business and what they're learning. So for example, if you were running a startup and you had a VC investing in you, you might have these learning milestones where, let's say, every 2 months you agree to meet with the VC and let them know, okay, what have we learned about what our customers want and don't want that's telling us that we're getting closer to finding market fit? And you can go back and watch my video on how market fit impacts software companies for a little more information about this. But really what it's all about is having accountability between how money's spent and what's being learned about what customers want as the way to find out how well a team's doing, and not what percentage complete they are of a big upfront design that some people that can't let go of their vision have, just to basically delay finding out that they didn't build the right product. So are you working for a company that has the courage to actually spend money differently month to month and discover things about their customer and change the work that the team's doing based on real feedback? Or are you working at one of these companies that does not do that, and they really look at it like we can do all the upfront research and we can figure out what all the best decisions are, and so things are measured based on the percentage complete of a project? Leave me some comments below. If you're new to my YouTube channel, please subscribe and click the bell icon. You'll be notified when there's new videos available. And you can also listen to this as a podcast on Stitcher, Google Play, SoundCloud, and iTunes. So until next time, thanks.